Mr. President, as you hear in Montana and I hear in Wyoming weekend after weekend as we go home, as we travel the state over the summertime, we're hearing from more people, we're seeing more articles in the newspaper about how the Obama health care law is falling apart. Every member of this body probably hears the same stories that I hear and heard again today visiting with people from Wyoming. Stories from people who can no longer afford their health care premiums, their health care coverage, the co-pays, the deductibles, all of the things that have happened because of the Obama health care law. So I think it's interesting, Mr. President, to reflect on that new survey done by the Gallup organization, well-known pollster from around the country, from a long history. They released numbers last week about what people are seeing around the country with regard to Obamacare, the things that we've been hearing at home every weekend. The first thing that we found is that more Americans disapprove of Obamacare than approve of it. Now, it's interesting because the Senate Minority Leader, Harry Reid, was on the floor yesterday saying repeatedly, isn't Obamacare great? Well, I would say to my friend and colleague from Nevada that no, as a matter of fact, more Americans disapprove, thumbs down, about the Obama health care law than people that approve. Well, that's not what was supposed to happen. Oh, no, when the minority leader, now the minority leader, then the majority leader, came to the floor a number of years ago with a bill that was written behind closed doors in his office, when they forced this through the House and the Senate, they said it'd be great. Senator Schumer, who may likely become the new leader of the Democrats in a new Senate after the minority leader retires, he predicted from the floor right over there that the law was going to be much more popular as time went on. He said, quote, "When people see what is in the bill and when people see what it does, they will come around." Well, Mr. President, it's now been 6 years. People have seen what's been in the bill. Remember Nancy Pelosi saying, first you have to pass it before you get to find out what's in it. People seen what's in it. They've not come around. People disapprove of the president's health care law, thumbs down, 51%. And it's interesting because the numbers have actually gotten worse, in spite of what the Senate Minority Leader said yesterday repeatedly when he said, isn't Obamacare great? Well, 4 years ago, when Gallup asked the same question, the numbers were actually only 45%. Now it's 51% disapprove, so it's actually heading backward. Obamacare is becoming more unpopular as time goes on and as people see why it has actually hurt them personally. Yes, Mr. President, that's what I said. Hurt them personally. The president's signature law hurting them personally. So let's take a look. How many people tell others that the Obama health care law has hurt them personally, them and their families? Record numbers say Obamacare hurt their family 29%. Have people been helped by the health care law? Yes. Only 18% of people, though, say they were helped by the health care law. Mr. President, what I hear repeatedly in Wyoming, and I assume you hear repeatedly in Montana, is that the president should not have had to hurt this many Americans to try to help people that didn't have insurance. Why should they have hurt people that had insurance to help those that didn't? That's why this law continues to be so unpopular. It's a record number. It's not what the president or the Democrats have said would happen with the health care law. What does the president say about the law? He says, forcefully defend and be proud. And I think that's why we see the minority leader on the floor yesterday saying, isn't Obamacare great? The minority party whip came to the floor on Tuesday. He said the major aspects of the law are working. That's what he said. This doesn't look like a law that's working to me. More Americans have been hurt by the law than have been helped. The senator from Illinois says, hey, things are the majority of the parts of the board, the major aspects of the law are working. Well, what are the major aspects? premiums, what people have to pay, but premiums are going through the roof. In that senator's home state of Illinois, the average person in Obamacare exchange is going to be paying 45% more next year than this year. That's when they select their plans November 1st. When they go to the exchange, see what's available, they're going to find 45% more expensive than this year. So it doesn't seem like the fundamental parts of the law are working. Why did the rates go up? It's because of Obamacare and the mandates that come from a Washington that decides it knows better than the people know themselves. Because they have to buy insurance that the president says they have to buy, not what they think might work best for them or their families. That's why record numbers say Obamacare has hurt their family. They can't buy what they want. They're paying a price that's too high. The deductibles are too high. The copays are too high. And so we hear the story of what's happening with Obamacare. There was one other question in this poll that I'd like to point to, Mr. President. And they asked all these American families about Obamacare. They say, in the long run, how do you think the health care law will affect your family's health care situation? Will it make it better for your family, as the Democrats promised? Will it have no effect, or will it actually make things worse for you and your family? Mr. President, over one-third of Americans, 36%, say that the health care law will make health care for them and for their family worse. Less than 1 in 4 say it's going to make it better. So more say Obamacare will make their family's health care situation worse. Mr. President, that's an overwhelming margin. Now, it's even higher margin than last year. So as people see the impact of the health care law, see the impact on themselves and on their families, they are looking at this saying things are going to continue to get worse because premiums have continued to go up, co-pays have continued to go up, deductibles have been continuing to go up, and their options are fewer and fewer. What's the administration say about that? Well, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Sylvia Burwell, wrote an op-ed that appeared in CNN 6 days ago. It was entitled, quote, "The Reality of Health Insurance Marketplace." That's what they told it, the reality of the health insurance marketplace. She said that all these higher prices that people are experiencing all around the country, the reason that people are saying it's worse for them and their family, that they have been hurt by the health care law, she described these as growing pains. That's what she said, Mr. President, growing pains. Well, as a doctor who practiced medicine for 25 years, I can tell you that growing pains generally happen when something is growing. But that's not what's happening here. What's actually happening here is Obamacare is shrinking. The Obamacare exchanges are shrinking. Millions of Americans will have fewer choices this year when they go to the Obamacare exchange than they had to buy insurance last year. In about 1 out of every 3 counties in America, people are going to be limited to only one single Obamacare coverage choice in 2017. Well, in her op-ed, the Secretary talked about the health insurance marketplace. Mr. President, when there is only one company selling insurance to a third of the country, that is not a marketplace, that is a monopoly. And that's why so many people say, for them and their families, they have personally been hurt by the law, and they believe it is going to make things worse for their family. This Democrats' health care law is turning the country into an Obamacare wasteland, a wasteland without choice, without opportunities to make decisions about what's best for you and your family. That's why the American people are so worried about the future of their health care, and why an incredible spike in the number of people who think for the future their health care will get worse. People look at these unsustainable price increases and they say, what am I going to do? They can't afford the insurance now. Maybe they can make it through this year. What about next year? Mr. President, people want and need relief. Because even if you're down to one choice, even if there is a monopoly and you're down to one choice and you have to buy it, because if you don't, President Obama and the Democrats say you must pay a fine, you must pay a penalty, you must pay a tax even though you have no choice. That's the Democrats' plan for health care. Fine them, penalize them, tax them, but we're not going to give them any choice. There is no marketplace. There is a monopoly. People want and deserve relief, and the Republicans are offering that kind of relief. We're offering relief and saying if you live in one of those counties where you're one out of every three, where you have no choices, the penalties, the mandates, and the fines should not apply to you. The Democrats say pay up anyway. If you live in a location where your premiums have gone up over 10%, the Republicans say you deserve relief from what President Obama and the Democrats have forced upon you. The Democrats say tough, pay up anyway. Pay the fine, pay the penalty, pay the tax. Mr. President, the American people deserve relief. People around the country are frightened by what they're seeing. They're frightened by what's happening with the health care law and the impacts, and they can see it getting worse and worse and worse. Mr. President, this didn't have to happen. Didn't have to happen. When the President wrote this law and had Harry Reid's office behind closed doors have it written over in that area, ignoring the pleas of the Republicans, ignoring the pleas of the American people who said, do not do this to us. The Democrats and the President said they know better. They know better than all of us. So if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Turned out not to be true. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. Turned out not to be true. Premiums would drop by $2,500, they said, and that was per year. Turned out not to be true. Mr. President, the plight of this health care law has been very damaging to so many Americans. There are people that needed help, but the Democrats should not have hurt so many Americans in their effort, who had insurance, who had something that worked for them, who had something they could afford, in an effort to help others that didn't have insurance. And that's why, Mr. President, these people are desperately asking for relief from a one-size-fits-all approach with Washington mandates, with unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats forcing more regulations on hospitals, on doctors, on nurses, on nursing homes across the board. And that's why the American people say the health care law is going to make things even worse. Mr. President, it's really distressing to hear a Democrat senator come to the floor and say, isn't Obamacare great? Because, Mr. President, the American people know that it is not. They know they have been hurt, they have been harmed, they have been taxed, they have been penalized, they have been forced to pay more, they have lost options, lost choices, lost opportunities because of this law and this administration and the way that this was passed without listening to people from both sides. So I think it's time for the Democrats to stop trying to spin this destructive law. It's time for them to work with Republicans to give the American people what they wanted from the beginning. They wanted the care that they need from a doctor that they choose at lower costs, not a health care law that so many Americans believe is going to continue to make health care in this country worse. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.